Picture a man on his 55th birthday. He is standing in a conference room he has walked into for 11 years, holding a paper cup of grocery store cake, and a folder just landed on the table in front of him. The folder is called a transition package. Everyone in the room is smiling. He is smiling too, because that is what you do. And somewhere behind his ribs, a very quiet voice says, "I thought I had 10 more years." He did everything he was told. He contributed to the 401k. He paid off the house early. He never carried a credit card balance. He has $340,000 saved, which sounds like a fortune until you divide it by the 35 years he might still be alive. He is not lazy. He is not reckless. He is simply standing at the exact spot where middle-class retirement planning quietly breaks, and nobody warned him it was here. This is not a story about people who made bad choices. It is a story about a plan that was designed for a life that no longer exists. The median retirement age in America is not 67. It is closer to 62, and roughly half of people who retire do not choose the date. Layoffs choose it. Health chooses it. A parent with dementia chooses it. The plan says work until 67, save steadily, and everything compounds. Reality says the last decade of earning, the decade the entire plan depends on, is also the decade you are most likely to lose your income and least likely to be hired again. Today, I am going to walk you through the 6 failure points that collapse middle-class retirement at 55, why almost nobody sees them coming, and what actually changes the outcome. Before we get to the first one, we need to establish the number that makes all of this dangerous. The last 10 working years are not 10% of your retirement plan. They are closer to 40% of it. Here is why. Compound growth is backloaded. If you invested steadily from 30 to 55, most of the dollars you will ever have are already in the account, and they are now doubling in large chunks rather than small ones. A $400,000 portfolio at 7% adds $28,000 in a single year without you lifting a finger. That is more than most people contributed in their entire 30s. Now add the contributions you were planning to make from 55 to 67, plus catch-up contributions, plus employer match, and the final decade is doing enormous work. Remove it and you do not lose 12 years of savings. You lose 12 years of savings, 12 years of growth on that savings, and 12 years of growth on everything you already had. Run the math, and a plan that was headed for 1.1 million lands, somewhere near 600,000. That is the entire mechanism. Everything that follows is a different way of removing that decade. Failure point 1. Your peak earning years and your peak vulnerability years are the same years. By 55, you are expensive. You have a senior title, senior salary, and 2 decades of raises stacked on top of each other. To a finance team looking at a spreadsheet, you are not experienced. You are a line item that costs more than 2 people in their late 20s. This is why restructurings hit the 50-plus band disproportionately, and it is why the phrase "we are flattening the organization" tends to arrive in your 50s rather than your 30s. And when it happens, re-entry is brutally slow. Older displaced workers routinely take a year or more to find work, and a large share never return to their previous income. The average pay cut is not 5%, it is often 20 to 40, so the plan does not just pause, it resets at a lower number permanently. Failure point 2. The sandwich decade arrives on schedule and nobody budgets for it. At 55, your parents are in their late 70s or 80s, your kids are in college or launching badly. Both of those cost money at the same time, and both of them cost something worse than money. They cost your availability. An adult child moves home. A parent needs 3 days a week of driving, appointments, and paperwork. So you decline the promotion. You turn down the travel. You go part-time because it is the only humane option. Nobody records this as a retirement decision. But the moment your income flattens at 55, the plan flattens with it. The average family caregiver spends over $7,000 a year out of pocket, and that figure does not include the wages they stopped earning. Failure point 3. The house you were told was an asset becomes the thing eating your retirement. You paid it off early. That felt like winning. And in one narrow sense, it was. But a paid-off house still costs you property taxes that rise every year, insurance premiums that have climbed savagely in the last 5 years, and maintenance that arrives in 5-figure chunks precisely when you can least absorb it. Roof, HVAC, sewer line, foundation. A 2,500 square foot house realistically costs $8,000 to $14,000 a year to simply continue existing before you turn on a single light. Meanwhile, the value of the house is trapped. You cannot spend a kitchen, So people arrive at 55 with most of their net worth locked inside a structure that generates zero income and demands payment every single month. On paper, they are comfortable. In cash flow, they are cornered. Failure point 4. Health insurance between 55 and 65 is the hole nobody plans for. Medicare begins at 65. If your job ends at 55, you have a 10-year gap to cover yourself. For a couple in their late 50s, unsubsidized marketplace coverage can run $1,500 to $2,000 a month, and deductibles sit on top of that. Call it $20,000 a year for 10 years, $200,000, from a portfolio that was never designed to fund it. And here is the trap inside the trap. To qualify for meaningful subsidies, your taxable income has to stay low. So the person who needs to withdraw from their 401k to survive is the same person whose withdrawal raises their income and destroys their subsidy. Withdraw more, pay more for insurance. It is a doorway that gets narrower the harder you push against it. Failure point 5. Sequence risk turns a normal market into a permanent loss. Every retirement projection you have ever seen assumes an average return. Markets do not deliver averages. They deliver order, and order is everything. If your portfolio drops 30% in the first 2 years of retirement while you are also withdrawing $40,000 a year to live, you are selling shares at the bottom to pay for groceries. Those shares are gone. They do not participate in the recovery. Two people can retire 5 years apart with identical savings, identical spending, and identical average returns, and one runs out of money at 8-1, while the other dies with more than they started with. The only difference is which years the bad ones landed in. An involuntary retirement at 55 multiplies this risk because you did not get to choose your starting point. The market chose it for you. Failure point 6. Social Security punishes exactly the person this happened to. Your benefit is calculated on your 35 highest earning years. Stop working at 55 and you may have gaps or low earning years from the consulting work you took to stay afloat. Sittings inside that calculation. Those years drag the average down. Then, because you need income, you file at 62. Filing at 62 instead of 67 cuts your benefit by roughly 30% permanently, not for a few years, for the rest of your life and for your surviving spouse after that. The system was built to reward the person who works until 67 and delays. It is nearly silent about what to do when 67 was never an option. So 6 failure points, and notice something about them. Not one is a spending problem. None of them is a latte. They are structural, they cluster in the same 5-year window, and they tend to arrive together because a layoff triggers the insurance gap, which triggers the early withdrawal, which triggers the sequence risk, which triggers the early filing, which brings us to what actually changes the outcome. The first shift is to stop treating 55 as a milestone and start treating it as a deadline. Build the plan so that if income stopped at 55, you would be uncomfortable rather than destroyed. That single reframe changes everything downstream. It means front-loading savings in your 40s instead of promising yourself you will catch up later. It means the catch-up contributions are not a bonus, they are the plan. The second shift is a bridge account, not a 401k, a regular taxable brokerage account, deliberately built to be spent between 55 and 65. It is flexible, it has no withdrawal penalty, and critically, capital gains are taxed differently than 401k withdrawals, which gives you room to keep your reported income low enough to protect insurance subsidies. 2 or 3 years of expenses in that account is the difference between a bad decade and a ruined one. The third shift is to build a second income before you need one. Not a side hustle in the exhausted sense, a skill you can rent out independently of an employer. Consulting, contract work, licensing, teaching, anything that can produce $20,000 to $40,000 a year on your own terms. $25,000 of independent income at 55 is worth more than $600,000 in the bank because it lets your portfolio stay invested through the exact downturn that would otherwise gut it. The best defense against sequence risk is simply not selling. The fourth shift is to look honestly at the house before it looks at you. Downsizing at 56 is a decision. Downsizing at 68 is a rescue operation. One of those releases equity while you still have options, the other happens after the options are gone. And the fifth shift is to stop treating your Social Security filing date as a fixed fact and start treating it as your most valuable remaining lever. Every year you delay past 62 adds permanent, inflation-adjusted, guaranteed income. If a bridge account or a small side income lets you delay even 2 years, you have given yourself a raise for the rest of your life. Now go back to the conference room. The man with the paper cup and the folder. He was never bad with money. He followed the instructions precisely. His only mistake was believing that the last decade of his career was guaranteed, when it was the least guaranteed decade of all. Everything he needed to survive that day was buildable at 45. Almost none of it was buildable at 55. That is the part nobody warns you about. Not that retirement is expensive, but that the plan quietly assumes you get to choose when it starts. You may not. So the real question is not whether you are saving enough. It is whether your plan survives a phone call you did not schedule. Build for the year you might be told to leave, not the year you hope to.